Julian Miles was only 10 years old when he first stepped onto the alien world of Safarial. His father, Dr. Alan Miles, was a famous xenobotanist, sent there to help the Seferi people learn how to grow earth plants in their sky gardens. Julian's mother had stayed behind on Earth, and he missed her a lot. But Safarial was full of wonders: floating lakes, glowing trees, and birds that could sing in colors. Still, nothing amazed Julian more than the Moon Garden. The Moon Garden wasn't open to everyone. It was sacred ground, hidden deep within. The royal spire, the tall, crystal palace that looked like a frozen waterfall. It was a place where only the royal family could walk, especially during the quiet hours of the twin moons rising. But Julian was curious, always had been. One evening, while his father worked late, Julian slipped away from the guest quarters. He wandered the quiet palace halls, following a strange scent in the air like honey and mint-tanned, glowing blue petals that had fallen on the floor like bread crumbs. Eventually, he came to a silver gate, covered in vines that shimmered like starlight. A guard stood nearby, dozing lightly. Julian paused. He knew he wasn't supposed to go in, but something in his heart said he needed to. So he tiptoed past the sleeping guard and slipped into the Moon Garden. Inside, the world was silent and soft. The flowers glowed gently under the moonlight. Long, hanging vines sparkled like stars. Pools of silver water reflected the sky like glass. Everything looked like a dream. That's when he saw her. She was sitting on a wide stone bench beside a blooming, starry tree. She wore robes of deep violet and gold, her silver blue skin glowing gently. Her hair floated slightly in the air, as if caught in a breeze that wasn't there. A small crown rested on her head. She was Princess Thalia, though Julian didn't know her name yet. She turned to look at him, her violet eyes wide in surprise. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Julian did what any 10-year-old boy might do in that moment. He waved awkwardly and said, "Hi." The princess blinked. "You are human?" Julian nodded. "Yeah, I'm Julian. Sorry for coming in. I just wanted to see the garden. I didn't know anyone was here." Thalia looked at him curiously. "No one comes here. Only the royal family. You could be punished." Julian scratched the back of his neck. "I didn't mean to break any rules." There was a long silence. Then, to his surprise, she smiled. "I am Thalia," she said. "You are strange, Julian, but not rude." "Thanks. I think—" She laughed, a soft sound like wind chimes. "Come sit. I am tired of being alone." Julian hesitated, then walked over and sat beside her. For a while, they just talked. She told him about the Moon Garden, how it only bloomed under twin moons. She said her people were empaths. They could feel the emotions of others. That's why the garden was so peaceful, responded to feelings. Julian listened, amazed. In return, he told her about Earth, about school, cartoons, how pizza tasted, and how his dog always barked at trees. She laughed at that, and he felt proud. Hours passed like minutes. The moons rose higher. The garden glowed brighter. Finally, Thalia looked at him and said, "You are different from the others. You speak from the heart. You're not afraid of me, even though I am royal." "Even though I am not human?" Julian shrugged. "You're just a person, right? A nice one?" Thalia tilted her head. "When I grow older, I must choose a bondmate. It is tradition. I do not want one chosen by the court." Julian looked at her seriously. "Then choose someone you like." She nodded slowly. "Perhaps I will." They sat in silence again. Then Julian said something he never planned, never rehearsed. It just came from deep inside. "When I grow up, I'll come back. I'll marry you. Then you won't have to be alone." Thalia's eyes widened. "You would promise this?" Julian stood up, put a hand over his heart like he saw knights do in old cartoons, and said, "I promise. I'll come back and marry you." She smiled. Not as a royal, but as a girl who had never received a real promise before. "Then I will. Wait." And that was it. The next morning, the guards discovered Julian had been in the Moon Garden. There was some panic, Some scolding, but Thalia defended him. She said he had been respectful, and no laws were broken. The court let it go. Soon after, Julian's father finished his work, and they left Sepe. Ariel doped out the window of the transport ship as the stars stretched into lines. He could still see Thalia's face in his mind. Years passed. Most people forgot about that little boy who wandered into a royal garden. The story became a small rumor in the court, half fairy tale, half embarrassment. Surely, no human child meant such a thing seriously, and even if he did, how could a royal princess ever bond with someone from a backwater species like Earth? But Thalia didn't forget. She kept a single earth flower in her chamber, blue tulip Julian had picked from the garden wall. She learned Earth language fluently. She followed news from the Terran Alliance and every night under the twin moons. She sat in the garden and remembered the boy with the honest heart and the ridiculous promise. Back on Earth. Julian grew older. He studied alien cultures, became strong, clever, and determined. Everyone said he was brilliant, but a little always looking at the stars. Always working too hard. When asked why, he would smile and say, just keeping a promise. No one understood. But he remembered always the garden, the girl. The promise, and deep inside, he never treated it like a joke. It meant every word. 12 years had passed since Julian Miles left Safarial. He was no longer a boy. He had grown into a tall, calm man with sharp eyes and a quiet voice that people listened to. He was now a diplomatic officer for the Terran Alliance, trained in alien cultures and peacekeeping missions, but this new mission was different. It was personal. He was returning to Separial. The peaceful planet was not peaceful anymore. Tensions had grown between the Sefri noble houses. Some nobles believed humans were a threat to Sefri purity. Others believed in unity and peace with Earth. The Princess Thalian, and now a grown woman and heir to the throne, was stuck in the middle. She had refused all marriage proposals. That made her enemies stronger. Without a royal bondmate, many nobles believed she was unfit to lead. Some even wanted to remove her. The Terran Alliance sent Julian as an observer and a voice for peace. But Julian had another reason for coming. He had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. The shuttle landed on the royal airfield beneath the tall, shining towers of Veltari, the Seferi capital. As Julian stepped out, alien guards in silver armor surrounded the landing area. Their faces were hidden under glowing masks. A noble-looking Seferi approached him. His robes were dark, his eyes cold. "I am Lord Vareth, Minister of Foreign Order," he said in a flat tone. "You are the human delegate." Julian nodded politely. Julian Miles, here under peaceful agreement. Lord Vareth studied him with a strange expression. "You carry no weapons?" "I only bring words," Julian replied. "Words are dangerous here," Vareth said, and walked away. Julian was led through the city under heavy escort. He could feel the tension in the airshops closed early, guards at every street corner. Strange looks from civilians. Sefarial was beautiful, but fear hung in the air like smoke. When they reached the royal spire, Julian looked up. It still looked like a frozen waterfall made of crystalline moonlight. It hadn't changed, but he had. Inside the palace, Thalia sat on the high seat of the moon throne. She wore a long robe of sapphire silk and a headpiece of silver vines. Her expression was calm, but her eyes widened slightly when Julian entered the court chamber. He bowed deeply. She stood slowly. "You have returned." Julian looked up and smiled softly. "I made a promise." The chamber fell silent. Whispers moved like wind through the room. Many nobles frowned. Some even laughed quietly. A few looked angry. Lord Vareth stepped forward. "Is this some human joke, Princess? You greet this man as if Thalia raised her hand?" Silence. Everyone obeyed. She stepped down from the throne and walked toward Julian. Her voice lowered. "You have changed, but your emotions are still the same," she said, placing her hand lightly on his chest. "Your heart is ... honest." Julian nodded. "So is my reason for coming. I remember what I said, and I'm here to stand by it." Thalia turned to the court. Her voice rang with strength. 12 years ago, this human child entered the moon garden. He spoke no lies. He offered no gifts. He gave only a promise from the heart. I have waited. Now he stands before you as a man. The court buzzed. With shocked voices, Julian remained still. This cannot be serious, Vareth barked. He is not of our people. He is not bonded to our ways. Thalia stared at him coldly. He is bonded to truth. And that is more than I can say for many in this room. Julian said nothing. He simply looked at her and she looked back. A quiet trust passed between them. Later that night, Julian was given a guest chamber, sat on the balcony, looking at the stars. They were the same ones he had seen as a boy. A soft voice spoke behind him. You remember the garden? He turned. Thalia stood there, wearing a simple moon-gray robe. I remember every flower, he said. She sat beside him. For a moment, they didn't speak. Then she whispered, Do you still mean it? Julian looked into her eyes. I do. She nodded. Then we are in danger. What do you mean? A refusal to choose a noble bondmate has made me enemies. Some wish to remove me by law. Others, ... by force. You think someone may attack you? I think someone already plans to, she said quietly. Julian leaned forward. Let them try. Didn't just come back for a ceremony. I came to protect. You, Thalia smiled, just a little. You always say the right thing. Don't plan what I say, Julian said. I just speak from the heart. Like last time. The next morning, Julian was summoned to a meeting of the High Circola Council of powerful nobles who advised the throne. The chamber was cold, full of eyes that did not trust him. Vareth spoke first. You claim to intend marriage with the princess? That is not your right. Julian looked at him calmly. She has the right to choose. I didn't force anything. Another noble, Lady Sira, said. Our laws do not forbid union with offworlders, but it has never happened. Julian nodded. Then perhaps it's time it did. You insult our traditions, Vareth said. No, I honor them. I honored her word and mine, Julian replied. That's what tradition should be. Truth, not control. Whispers stirred again. Thal seared at the head, said, I have not chosen this path lightly, but I will not be ruled by fear or forced into union with those who seek power, not partnership. Vareth slammed his hand on the table. Then your reign will be challenged, and when it falls, this human will fall with it. Julian stood slowly. Then I'll fall standing beside her. The room went silent. Thalia's eyes shone with emotion. For the first time in many moons, she felt hope. That night, a secret message was left on Julian's chamber door. It was written in old Sci-Fi script. Leave now. The binding will not happen. The bloodline must not mix. Julian showed it to Thalia, who grew pale. It begins, she said. They'll try. To stop us? Or kill us? Julian looked at her and said, Then we don't wait. We prepare. In the royal armory, Julian trained with Sci-Fi guards. Though he wasn't as fast or strong as them, he had something different human strategy he used. Timing, misdirection, and willpower. Even the guards started to respect him. He fights like a firestorm, one of them whispered. Thalia watched in secret, heart racing. He was not the boy she had once met. And he had come back not with weapons or armies, but with loyalty. 2 days later, the court declared that the binding ceremony would take place in public. The nobles believed it would make Thalia hesitate, as she wouldn't dare follow. Threw under pressure, but Thalia stood firm. Julian stood taller, and together they would face whatever came. 3 days before the binding ceremony, the royal court of Safarial was burning with whispers. A humanist species many nobles still saw as weak and strange was now standing beside Princess Thalia as her chosen bondmate. For some, it was shocking. For others, it was dangerous. And for a few, it was unforgivable. Still, Julian Miles walked the palace halls calmly. He greeted every guard, every servant, and every noble with respect. People noticed. Even those who disliked him couldn't ignore his confidence. He didn't act like a stranger or a fool. He acted like someone who belonged. But the hardest test was still to come. The High Council sent a message to Thalia. If she wished to make her bond with an outsider, then that outsider must complete the trial of the flame Miron, ancient challenge that tested not just the body, but the soul. No off-worlder had ever taken it. Most didn't survive. Thalia was furious. This is a trap. You don't have to accept, Julian. They want to. Break you in front of the people. Julian only smiled. Then I won't break. You could die. I didn't come this far to run now. She looked at him, unsure whether to argue or to hold him. Instead, she whispered, Then I will watch, and I will wait. The Flamir trial was held in the Hall of Reflection, a wide chamber deep beneath the palace, where the walls glowed with ancient fire crystals. In the center was a platform surrounded by burning pillars. The trial was part physical, part mental, but its greatest challenge was facing your deepest truth. Sci-Fi elders surrounded the chamber, and nobles watched from the glass balconies. Above, Julian stood alone. A bell rang. The trial began. First, he faced heat and light. The walls shifted. Flame illusions danced. He was made to walk through a maze of mirrors that showed him versions of himself. One weak, one proud, one full of doubt. The illusions whispered, You are not worthy. She will see your fear. You are just a boy playing a hero. Julian gritted his teeth. His body was sweating, his skin burned from the light. But he walked forward, one step at a time. I am not perfect, he said aloud, but I am true. The illusions shattered. Then came the second challenge, a physical test. A great warrior stepped from the flame. General Sorith, a legend among. The Sci-Fi, now old but still fierce. The general bowed. I do not want to fight you, human, he said, but I must. Julian nodded. I understand. The duel began. Julian was not stronger, but he was fast, smart, and used every trick he had learned. He ducked under high swings, used the general's size against him, and even threw sand from the cracked floor to blind him for a moment. The crowd gasped as Julian knocked the warrior to the ground. Sorith looked up, laughing. You are not a prince, but you are not weak. He helped Julian stand. The second challenge was passed. The final challenge was the truth fire. Julian was led to a floating stone. There he was told to place his hands in a bowl of glowing red flame. The fire would read his heart. If he held lies, it would burn him. He spoke false love, it would turn to blue and reject him. Julian did not hesitate. He placed his hands in the flame. It burned hot but not painful. He closed his eyes and spoke. When I was a child, I met a girl in a garden. She was alone. So was I. We talked like friends, laughed like children. I made a promise, a foolish one, maybe, but it came from my heart. He opened his eyes. I never forgot her, even when I returned to Earth, even when others laughed at me. I waited. I worked. I grew. All for the chance to keep my word, not just to marry a princess, but to stand beside the person who saw me when no one else did. The flame rose higher, then turned pure white. A whisper spread through the elders. He speaks true, one of them said. The fire accepts him, another added. Thalia watched from above, her eyes filled with tears. Julian stepped down from the platform, his hands untouched by burns. It passed the trial of the flame mirror. That night, across Safarial, the people talked. They spoke of the human who faced the fire, who defeated a warrior, who walked through illusions and never blinked. Some nobles still hated him, but many of the people began to hope. Perhaps peace is possible, they said. Perhaps love is. Not bound by blood or skin, but peace has enemies. In the shadows of the outer city, Lord Vareth met with cloaked figures. They were not nobles. They were extremists, warriors, who believed the Sci-Fi should rule alone, no humans, no outsiders. The ceremony must not happen, Vareth growled. The princess has chosen wrongly. She has insulted our honor. The time for words is over, one of the cloaked men said. We strike at the binding. They must die, Vareth whispered. And they will, the man replied. On the day of unity, ... we bring fire. Back in the palace, Julian and Thalia stood in the moon garden once again. It had not changed much. The starlily tree still bloomed under the twin moons. The air still smelled like honey and mint. Julian looked around and smiled. Feels like yesterday. Thalia stepped close. Feels like destiny. He reached out and held her hand gently. Are you ready for the ceremony? She nodded. Are you ready to become part of another world? He smiled. I was ready the moment I left yours. They stood in silence, surrounded by glowing flowers. But far above them, deep in the shadows of the towers, someone watched. A dark figure placed a hand on a small weapon glowing red dot and whispered, "Let the fire fall." The day of the binding ceremony arrived under the twin moon's glow. The whole city of Veltari was alive with excitement and tension. Banners of blue and silver waved in the gentle wind, and the streets were filled with citizens and nobles alike. Many came to witness history, the union between Princess Thalia and the human. Julian Miles, inside the royal spire. The grand hall was decorated with shining crystals and blooming flowers from both Earth and Safarial. The air was thick with anticipation. Julian stood beside Thalia on the dais. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from hope. After the trials, after the council's whispers, this was the moment he had promised to keep so many years ago. Thalia looked radiant, her silver-blue skin glowing softly, her violet eyes shining. With determination, the high priestess stepped forward to begin the ceremony. Today, we witnessed the binding of two souls. Not just from different families or houses, but from two worlds, she announced. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. May their bond be strong and their hearts united. The priestess raised a silver chalice filled with glowing water. From the moon garden, Julian and Thalia each dipped their fingers in and touched the other's hand. The air shimmered suddenly. A loud explosion shook the hall. Flames burst from the ceiling. Crystals shattered and rained down like stars falling. Screams echoed. Julian's instincts kicked in. He grabbed Thalia's hand and pulled her down just as a shard of crystal flew past where she had stood. "Run," he shouted. They dodged falling debris and rushing nobles. Guards shouted orders, trying to restore order. But chaos ruled the room. From the crowd, dark figures cloaked in black moved quickly, wielding strange weapons that fired glowing darts. The assassin's target was clear the princess and her human bondmate. Julian pushed Thalia behind a pillar and drew a small energy blade gifted to him by a Sefri guard. It hummed with power. "Stay close," he told her. They fought their way toward the exit. Julian deflected dart after dart, using every skill from his training. Thalia, though not a warrior, moved with grace, helping where she could. One assassin lunged at Julian, but he blocked the strike and pushed the attacker into a wall. Another came from behind, but Julian spun just in time, slashing the weapon from their hands. Thalia shouted, "This way," and led him through a hidden door. Into the palace gardens. Outside, the moonlit garden was quieter, but danger was still near. Julian looked around, trying to spot the attackers. "We have to get to the palace guard," he said. But Thalia stopped him. "No, they will only catch us. We need to find safety inside the palace walls." Julian nodded, his mind racing. They moved quickly through the glowing trees and floating lights, heading toward the royal chambers. But from the shadows, more cloaked figures appeared, blocking their path. Julian's breath caught. "Ready?" he asked. Thalia nodded. They fought. Again, this time side by side. Julian's energy blade clashed against weapons that crackled with electricity. Thalia, though unarmed, used her strength and quickness, dodging attacks and helping Julian where she could. At one point, Julian was thrown to the ground, but Thalia was there instantly, pushing an attacker away. "We fight together," she said fiercely. Julian smiled despite the danger. Together, suddenly a powerful blast hit the ground near them. Julian was thrown backward, hitting a tree. Thalia screamed, running to his side. Julian was breathing hard, but still alive. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, the dark, cold eyes of Lord Vareth. "You should have left," Vareth hissed. "This ends now." Julian struggled to his feet. "It ends when you admit that love is stronger than hate," Vareth sneered. "Your love is a lie." You're an outsider. You don't belong here. Julian shook his head. I belong wherever I keep my promises. Thalia stood beside Julian, placing a hand on his shoulder. Your hatred will not break us. Vareth's face twisted in anger. He raised a weapon glowing with red energy, aiming at Thal. Single quotes, Julian moved faster than he thought possible. He threw himself between the weapon and the princess. The blast hit Julian's chest. He was thrown backward with a cry, falling hard onto the ground. Pain exploded through his body, his vision blurred. But through the haze he saw Thalia rushing. To his side, tears in her eyes. Julian, she cried. He tried to speak, but his voice was weak. Vareth laughed cruelly. Look at your champion, princess. Weak and broken. But the palace guards arrived just then, surrounding Vareth and his men. The extremists were captured. Thalia held Julian close, whispering, "Stay with me." Julian's breath was shallow, but his heart was full. I kept my promise, he whispered. Thalia smiled through tears, and I will keep mine. Julian was taken to the palace healers. The red blast was deadly, but thanks to advanced Sci-Fi technology, his life was saved. He was weak for days, but he fought to recover. Throughout it all, Thalia never left his side. She spoke to the court and the people about the attack, calling for unity and peace. Her voice was strong, her message clear. Those who hate will never win. Love is our true power. Slowly, the people of Safarial began to see Julian not as a human outsider, but as a hero who risked everything for their princess and their world. Weeks later, the binding ceremony was rescheduled. This time, there would be no interruptions. Julian stood again beside Thalia, stronger and ready. The princess took his hand, their fingers intertwined. Glowing softly in the moonlight, the high priestess spoke. The words of binding once more, the crowd held its breath. Julian and Thalia drank from the chalice, sealing their bond. The air around them shimmered with a warm light. The union was complete. The sun rose slowly over the twin moons of Safarial, casting soft pink and gold light over the royal palace. For the first time in many years, the people of Veltari felt a calm and hopeful peace. The binding ceremony had been completed without interruption, and Julian Miles was now officially the prince consort, bonded to Princess Thalia. But peace was not easy. The real work was just beginning. In the grand hall, Julian stood beside Thalia as they listened to the council. The leaders of Safarial looked serious but respectful. Julian was no longer just a visitor. He was a part of this world. Prince. Julian, said Elder Naris, the oldest council member, your courage has inspired many. But now, you face a different challenge, the future of two worlds. Julian nodded. I understand. I came here to keep a promise. I want to help. Build a future for both our peoples. Thalia smiled at him. We will face it together. Days passed with meetings, plans, and discussions. Julian learned more about Safarial's culture and history, and he shared stories from Earth. It wasn't always easy. Some nobles were still wary of him, and some citizens were unsure about the union, but Julian had an idea. We will open a new school, he said one morning during a council meeting, a place where humans and Sefri children can learn together, not just about science or history, but about respect and friendship. The council murmured. Education builds bridges, Julian added. If the young grow up understanding each other, hate will not survive. Thalia reached out and took his hand. Together, we can make this dream real. The school opened. Within months, children from Earth and Safarial came to study, laugh, and play together under one roof. Julian and Thalia visited often, watching as friendships grew and new ideas sparked. One afternoon, Julian sat in the garden with a group of children. A young Sefri girl named Lyra looked up at him. Prince Julian, how did you know you could keep your promise all those years ago? Julian smiled softly. Because sometimes, when you believe in something, you find strength you didn't know you had. The children listened closely. Promise, Lyra repeated. Strong like fire. Exactly, Julian said. Strong like fire that never goes out? But not everything was peaceful. Outside the palace walls, there were still those who feared change. Lord Vareth had been imprisoned, but his followers remained hidden, plotting. One night, Julian received a warning from a loyal guard. They planned to attack the school, the guard whispered. Tonight, Julian didn't hesitate. He woke Thalia. "We must protect the children," he said. Thalia nodded. "We'll face this together." The night was dark and silent as Julian and the palace guards waited near the school. Shadows moved quickly toward the gates. The extremists had come. Julian raised his energy blade. "Hold the line." The attackers charged, but Julian and the guards fought bravely. Thalia joined in, using her strength and speed to defend the children inside. The battle was fierce but short. The extremists were defeated and captured. Afterward, Julian looked around at the frightened children. He knelt down. "You are safe now," he said. "And remember, courage is the strongest power we have." With the danger behind them, Julian and Thalia continued their work. They traveled to Earth and brought Sci-Fi ambassadors. Together, they worked on trade, technology, and culture exchange programs. Slowly, the two worlds began to understand each other better. One evening, standing under the starlit sky, Julian and Thalia looked at the horizon. "We have come far," Julian said. "Yes," Thalia replied. "But the journey is just beginning." Years passed. The school grew into a great academy. The peoples of Earth and Safarial lived in harmony more than ever before. Julian thought back to the little boy he once was alone in a garden, promising a princess marriage he barely understood. Now he was a prince, not just of Safariel, but of two worlds joined by love and hope, and he knew, no matter what challenges came next, he would keep that promise forever.